Okay, we'll carry on. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just going back to slide 10, Mike is back in the room. Councillor Cooper just queried the amounts for Ocean Park for the irrigation and filtration. So Mike's here to answer that question.
Thanks, Mark. So that's primarily around drainage of the sports fields, irrigation and drainage of the sports fields. So one of the issues we have across the district is the loss of sports days because of poor drainage. So over time, we are progressively improving the drainage in particular. So that's what that is for. First of all, improving what's already there, but actually upgrading it too so that it is better able to deal with more intense rainfall events.
Does that answer your question, Glenn?
Yeah,
Turn your microphone on.
New infrastructure is the question, and the answer is yes.
So the question is it new infrastructure?
Well, it's upgrading existing infrastructure.
Yeah, great. Cool. We'll go back to where we're up to. Financial strategy, our friendly triangle.
Thank you. So we're on slide 14. So a couple of these slides, 3 of these slides you've actually seen before. So I'll go through them with speed. So the financial strategy for the next long-term plan will still be represented by the 3 levers in the triangle. So where we're at the moment is in terms of rates, we're at a draft average rates increase of 12%. That's for year 1. In previous sessions last week, we took you through the breakdown of the net interest charge. We showed you the debt levels. So the net debt as at 30 June 2025 is forecast to be 295 million. And as you know, what we're proposing at the moment is the Capital Works program has a total budget of $71 million at this stage to reflect deliverability. So that's just where we're kind of at today. I just wanted to recap. So the current. Well, let's just go back. I wanted to recap. So we had a financial strategy in the 1828 LTP. And that was a different time back then. It was about achieving a balance. We had very high debt. We had a high amount for non-funded depreciation, and it was about bringing us back into the black and creating capacity to be able to invest. So the financial strategy has got upper and lower limits on rates, borrowings, and Capital Works program. And on the screen is just what those limits, upper and lower and preferred, were for the last LTP. So the rates, the ranges was 2.9 to 5.5. In terms of net debt, the cap was the lesser of 200 million or 240% of total operating revenue. And the gross cap, the capex, was between 15 million and 38 million. So that was in place for the 1828 LTP. The current long-term plan, the 2141 long-term plan, has quite a different financial strategy. We obviously had COVID, we had pressure from central government to stimulate the economy, and we also had a lot of forecast growth. So we wanted to invest wisely for that growth that we knew was coming with the expressway, with Transmission Gully as well. So the limits on rates went from 2.9 to 3 and went from 5.5 to 9. So obviously much larger in scale. The debt went to 280% of total operating income. When you're investing in the region, one of the mechanisms we fund our investments through debt, so we needed to create more headroom. And the gross capex went from 38 million cap to 80 million. So obviously investing for the growth that we knew was coming. We have landed this concept with councillors, is that we think for the next long-term plan, financial strategy is a mixture of both. It's a bit of a hybrid. You want to invest for growth, but you also need to achieve a balance. We've got high interest rates, we've got high inflation, we've got very, obviously much higher costs on our Capital Works program, and you've definitely got, household cost pressures, and we've also got a district-wide revaluation where property values are going up, and we know that there are parts of the district that's still at a lower base and their values will go up, and that'll impact on what they pay on rates. So what we're thinking at the moment, initial thinking is the financial strategy. It will be a hybrid. So in the short term, so for the first 2 years, 24, 25, 25, 26, it'll be about being quite constrained, slowing things down where we can. Affordability obviously front of mind, and as I said, we're very well aware of household cost pressures, and we're very, very aware of the district-wide property revaluations and the impact that that has on rates, which is why we do a rating system review. The midterm from year 3 onwards, 26, 27, we're hoping that financially things will look a lot better. We would have had 3 years, and we don't know now, but hopefully we're anticipating to have 3 years of our debt repaid by the Crown, which relates to the Three Waters. That's obviously at the moment, that would happen over a 5-year period. Interest rates hopefully have come down and inflation has come down. So the world may look quite different when we get to 26, 27. And the financial strategy will be designed and will be drafted in a way that will enable council to have options available at that point. So we're calling this the Financial Strategy Think Tank. So these are just concepts that we're thinking about as we develop our financial strategy. So the first one is debt down, stay down. So the affordable waters is in my words, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to really reduce this council's debt. So we already know that we would get $110 million. That was the number that we agreed with the Crown for June 22. And indications that the debt that we draw down for the Three Waters from 1 July 22 to when we transition would also be repaid by the Crown. So it's an opportunity to retire a third of our gross debt. The thinking is keep the debt down. So with debt comes interest charges. Interest charges are one of your building blocks for rates increases. So when interest rates go up, our interest rates go up, it puts upward pressure on our rates. So our thinking is, let's get it down, let's keep it down. Also, we're thinking with all these severe weather events, it's very important that we actually create headroom so that we're well placed for any shocks that may come. Our other think tank concept, financial strategy. So we have the opportunity to repay debt using money from the Crown, but how else would we repay our debt? At the moment, we pre-fund and we refinance, and every year we still continue to build assets, we still continue to renew assets, and our debt just goes up and up. So we want to start to get our debt down. So some of the thinking is, how do you do that? So one of the ways to do that is, as I said, the financial strategy is looking in about year 3. Things may look a little bit better. We may have a bit more capacity. The pressure on household costs may be down. So we're thinking at that point, maybe revisiting what we were trying to do with the 1838 LTP strategy, which is called Achieving a Balance, is actually rate fund small surpluses. Those surpluses will reduce debt. So we think we should still be proactively looking at getting our debt levels down. Then we've got recovery funding. So we've obviously seen Cyclone Gabrielle. We've seen a lot of councils just being told by the Crown, you have to pay $200 million for property buyouts. Our thinking at this stage, and there's a lot of work happening in this space, but we're not anticipating creating a fund for recovery that we don't need to do. But like other councils are starting to look at in terms of the financial strategy, is actually lock in or reserve some of your debt headroom so that there's capacity to be able to fund those buyouts if and when you need to. And so how would that work? We would look at our financial strategy limits. We'd look at the net debt to operating revenue. So we at the moment we can go up to 280%. Our preferential point is to be below 250. And when we develop the financial strategy, we may be looking to actually reduce that even further. So, for example, reduce it to 220%. So you're creating more headroom for those shocks. Because I think one thing we can count on is that there will be some unplanned event in the future. And then I've just got on the slide, I've got in brackets at the end for natural disasters, non-earthquakes. So if it's an earthquake, then our insurance policy kicks in, the Crown kick in with 60% funding. So this is for non-earthquake related natural disasters like cyclones, flooding, etc. So those are the kind of the key things that we're thinking about with that financial strategy. So it hasn't been drafted, so it's not yet ready to present, but we're thinking, let's keep the levers, let's keep the levels of service, let's have a hybrid, let's have a constrained first 2 years, open it up from year 3, make a provision for recovery funding by creating a locked headroom space.
Thank you. Liz? She can't hear.
Hi there, the meeting is muted for people online.
Is it muted now? Yes, obviously. I think we should sort that out before continuing. Can you hear us now, Liz?
Yep, thank you.
Great,
All good. Ta.
Thank you. So moving to the next slide. So another concept, and we've spoken about this before. So a concept that we're starting to explore with the financial strategy is, so at the moment, we rates fund our depreciation. So when we build new assets, we borrow money. We take into account, are there any development contributions, are there any financial contributions? And then when we renew our assets, that's mainly from depreciation, from rates funded depreciation. So in theory, in terms of the local government, when you rates fund depreciation, you achieve intergenerational equity, because the theory is that ratepayers are paying for their share and only their fair share of the assets they consume today. But if we have a look at what's happening at the moment, we know that every year we're revaluing our assets. So our asset values are uplifting by 30–40%. Every time we go and build an asset, our costings are increasing by 30%. So the cost of building those assets is going up at least 20–30%, which is increasing our depreciation, which means that it's having a phenomenal impact on the rates increase. So the question that we have is rates funding depreciation sustainable? Is that truly realising intergenerational equity? So there are other ways that we can fund the council. So most councils do rate funded depreciation. Some councils actually rate fund their debt repayments. And the key difference is we have such a large range of assets. Some of those assets are 70 to 100 years. The maximum term of the loans that we have on our book is 20 years. So if you're rate funding debt repayment, it's over a much smaller term. So the depreciation of an asset over 100 years is far less than the rates repayment of a 20-year loan. But we want to have a look at that. We need to be mindful that, you know, we're a business that will continue to build assets. And as long as we're continuing to build assets, as long as we continue to revalue our assets, our depreciation is going one way, it's going up, and that means our rates will go up. So we just want to have a look. We want to talk to the councils, do some modelling, have a look at what impact does it have on rates if we did shift to moving away from rates funding depreciation, but instead rates funding debt repayment, but still achieving the balanced budget requirement, which is embedded within local government. And then lastly, Standard & Poor's Global. So as you know, we have a fantastic credit rating. We have been put on negative outlook. That's just a concern that Standard & Poor's raised. They're worried about the OPEX that we spend, and they're worried about the size of the capital works program. And that's pretty much standard across the sector. They do a lot of analysis on our financials and our forecasts. They apply haircuts and they come up with ranges where they think we should be on our operating spend as well as our capital spend. And at the moment, we're well beyond their ranges, which is why they've given us the warning. So as we navigate through the financial strategy, it's very much in our interests to take stock of their warning and to look at the ranges and to try as much as possible return the council to within those ranges. But we won't compromise what we need to spend on our assets or our maintenance just to fit within the S&P Global range. But it's certainly not wise for us to come up with a financial strategy and a plan that blows S&P's global ranges, as that would lead, that could potentially lead to a credit rating downgrade, which will just increase our interest costs, which will put upward pressure on our rates.
Liz Coe has a question.
Liz?
Yeah, thanks. Quick question. Regarding funding depreciation, is it possible to have a hybrid model where some assets are debt funded and some are rates funded?
Yes, I think it is possible to have that, as long as you set it out in your financial strategy. Yep.
Because it makes sense, you know, for like some assets, as you say, last, you know, could be up to 100 years, whatever. Some are more short term. It's certainly understandable in terms of those longer term assets. You know, if you're talking, you know, like those big, huge sewage pipe, stormwater pipes were put in the ground recently, versus, you know, a block of toilets or something like that. I mean, there's a big difference there in the type of asset.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. Look, I think it's a something that we need to look at. I think we do need to proactively keep the lights on, deliver for the community, and reduce our debt levels. So a hybrid, where you have some mechanism within your financial strategy that's actually about reducing your debt, I think that's a good thing, and I think it's something we should look at.
But,
Thanks, Liz. Lawrence?
Yeah, I've just got a question. There seems to be a lot hanging around this thing called affordable waters, which there's a lot of still uncertainty sitting. Three Waters, affordable waters, repayment of debt related to that. I'm not sure how to... we can't make a strategy around an unknown, I think, is just the comment I'm probably making. So how much in terms of our thinking are we actually looking at the other option, which is affordable waters, is not going to go through in the form that it has been suggested it will? And so we'll potentially, and I'd even go back to our situation we're currently in the projected draft LTP, where we're choosing to not fund some of our debt related to Three Waters, and that reduces our rates. So we've got this. Are we doing the other work on the other side that says if this debt doesn't get paid down, if all of our budgets as we're currently setting them get blown out of the water, and all of a sudden, no pun intended, we've now got to work with something completely different?
No. So I think in terms of look at the moment, and a similar question came up last week. So at the moment, until we're told otherwise in the legislation, we must include the Three Waters in the first 2 years of the LTP. From year 3 onwards, they're out. So we aren't running two simultaneous long-term plans. We are modelling based on the assumption that the assets will transfer and the debt will come in. In terms of the proposal to reduce the depreciation by 4.5%, what we said in the slide is there is a risk. So your non-funded depreciation will go from 3.5 million to over 8.1 million. And if that doesn't materialise, there's $8.1 million of debt that we've got to repay. So the financial strategy has to show the Three Waters debt coming off. We are planning for that to happen. But as we go on our journey with you, If that advice changes or that direction changes, we'll have to change too. But at the moment, our 12% is based on something happening with the Three Waters, which involves a transfer of assets and a repayment of debt.
Okay. Sorry, that was probably part of the briefing last Tuesday that I was absent for, so my apologies.
I don't know that it was expressed that as clearly as it was just now. Are other councils doing the same thing? I know some councils are doing 2 scenarios.
What's the point?
I know of one council that's doing 2 versions. We at the moment, we aren't, because that takes a lot of resource. It's hard enough doing 1, never mind 2. And we're actually we're following the guidance that we've been given so far.
Martin?
Look, I just had a note to talk to Three Waters since Lawrence brought it up. I thought I would just jump in. Hearing everything you're saying, Mark, I'm just wondering, just wanted to flag maybe as part of the long-term plan document that we do tell the story of the Three Waters from our perspective and how unsettling it's been and how, we've had to make certain provisions, all that sort of scenario. I don't think the community has any idea how difficult or what such a difficult position that's put us in. With regards to things, when we talk about you bringing us on a journey, maybe we need to just make our community just a bit more aware. I mean, and freely admitting that it's still got to be some settling down, which may happen over the next 3 months with regards to what might come out of central government. But no matter what comes out of there, I think having something in that long-term plan that talks to that journey over the last couple of years and whatever it looks like as it ends up to, I think would be quite an interesting thing to have included in the long-term plan. Just want to flag that. We can discuss it later on, but just want to get it in the mix now.
Where are we? Oh, Darren, here you are.
Thanks. I just wanted to add to Mark's comments. So we've been pretty true to the process in working with the legislation that's in front of us when it comes to the water transition program. Now, I'd love for a government to be formed and to actually start seeing some direction about what repeal and replace might look like. Don't know when that's going to come. So in the meantime, we have to play what's in front of us, which is to have the current work program to October of next 25 for us to understand that. Now, I don't know, and I don't think it's wise to make assumptions about what repeal and replace may look like, and that is something that if it does happen in some form or sense, we'll have to address that and understand how we can respond to that and respond to that at pace or otherwise, depending on what it looks like. We also have the need for referendum through our standing orders if we are not legislatively imposed upon us to shift the waters, which is something that is very, very different to the rest of the councils. So that is another what if for us if affordable waters doesn't progress. Just food for thought.
Thank you, Paikakariki. Shelley?
Does the strategy take into account the staff that are going to be taken away with Three Waters? Was that beyond this financial outlook?
So the financial strategy does have to take into account the impacts on that. It's not only the staff, it's if that model happens. So the financial strategy looks at rates. So rates will obviously be different, but so the financial strategy will talk to what is the impact on rates of the Three Waters, what is the impact of rates on debt, what is the impact of rates on the capital works program. So it has to clearly show that. So the short answer is yes. But as I've said, so the LTP must have the Three Waters for the first 2 years, and the infrastructure strategy does not have to have the Three Waters. that the financial strategy must show the impact of the transition. So that's what we're working up and developing at this stage.
Richard?
Just a quick question. If the government, whoever they may be, does change the rules and it happens shortly before June next year, how can you pass a plan if the rules have completely changed? You've consulted on something and your plans are completely changed.
Look, I might look to Sean to supplement my answer, but that's the risk. That's the risk we take. So,
And his role
I
as
think
infrastructure manager or deputy chief executive?
I think they've already built a safeguard, and by currently they're saying that your consultation document cannot talk about the three waters. It's already a foregone conclusion that it's happening. So you can't consult with the community on whether they support affordable water reform or not. The second thing is the first 2 years of the LTP must have the water. So, and that's because the entities themselves may not be able to invoice and collect the money for their charges. So they've my words, they've bought themselves 2 years, knowing that the local government sector, we've been told we must still do an LTP on or before the 30th of June 2024, and we must have the three waters in the LTP, and there will be no amendment required when you do the transition. So there's quite a few safeguards in place, but if there's a fundamental step change, my expectation is that we don't adopt an LTP, but probably adopt an annual plan.
Otherwise, all that work will go down the toilet.
Gosh.
Be washed away. Yeah, I call this the perils of pendulum politics, by the way. Lawrence, did you have something to say? Your light was on a second ago, and Richard, your light was on, and now they're both off.
Mine's back on again. Did you want to say something, Richard? Okay.
Answered already.
So my question follow on to that was, if it does get cancelled, does that trigger our significance and engagement policy?
Yes, I think it would, wouldn't it? No? Sean's shaking his head. Sean?
Yeah, I think so if we were on the current program, we were set for October 24 as the go live date. And that was under pressure 6 months ago, whenever they put that figure out. So, and they've lost a whole lot of momentum and time, and so timing-wise, as Mark said, I don't think if they're going to require some sort of mandatory change, you're still looking at least another 2 years to make that happen. So, so there would be no change to our current process in terms of 2 years with the three waters in, and then whatever that might mean in 2 years' time, we'd have to do something in that space. But the National have sort of said that they will. There's change needed. There's a lot of talk about CCOs, voluntary options for councils to opt in. So yeah, I don't know. There's much we can really change at the moment, or should change other than progress on what we're doing. But because we are still doing all the background work in terms of the costs associated with those assets. So they may not be modelled in terms of the actual system that we use, but all of the supporting information, the asset management plans that have been used to build up the budgets for those three waters, all of that work is happening and will be provided regardless of who's running the three waters. The background information's the same, really. What they need to look at, I guess, is their own overhead, their operational cost associated with that, which we're not factoring in, but everything else is work that the team have done a lot of it and continuing to do. So we should be we'll be in a reasonable position to step into something. It's then maybe what that means in terms of if it's a longer time span or the three waters stay with us for longer, I guess, is the bigger issue. And again, as Darren's mentioned, there's a referendum there that we would need to do, and whether the LTP may be an opportunity to test that with the community. But again, we're not really placed to do that at the moment. We haven't really talked about that at all, and we won't know what the government's going to do potentially until after I don't know, January, February, after Christmas, who knows when.
You know, I think further down the track would be the time for that. Is that a hand up, Liz? It's a ghost hand. No, it's not. We'll carry on.
Okay, so moving on to slide
Oh.
20.
It's my thing.
So moving on to slide 20. So that's pretty much it for today. So the key takeouts of what we discussed is not to over-labour the point, but we're sitting on a draft average rates increase of 12%. The uncontrollable costs actually put the council at 9.6. We're still reviewing our costs to see if we can get down to around about the 8.86% mark. We talked about strategy and growth, retaining $1.8 million. That has no rates increase on year one of the LTP. That funding has been reallocated. 1.4 of that has been reallocated towards economic development initiatives, which we've taken you through. And then in terms of the financial strategy, we're looking at developing a hybrid strategy, which balances achieving a balance, investing for growth. And in terms of the concepts, the financial strategy will look to create debt headroom for recovery. It'll look to have debt down, stay down, and we'll look at shifting from depreciation funding to debt funding, because that's probably more sustainable for intergenerational equity. There were a number of queries that were raised when we went through the economic development slide, and we'll see of those queries which ones can be included in the briefing next week, and which ones will come back at a later LTP presentation. So gotta just keep putting this up on the board. So it's 12%. The option of insurance was taken off because there's more work happening in that space, and that will be brought back to council next year. So to get to 8.86, we're looking at having to take out the budget $2.8 million and a reduction of 3.14%. And as I said, we're looking at our budgets. What's coming up? So we've got another session, another public debrief is on Thursday, the 16th of November. We'll recap what we discussed today. We will also see what ED responses we table on Thursday. We will, if we can, we only started these debriefs last week. As and when we identify options to further reduce our rates, we will table that. So that's a placeholder. We also want to discuss with you additional CapEx initiatives that aren't actually in the budget that were mentioned last week. And then we will start to test some consultation topic ideas, because it is really critical that we are very clear on what we're consulting on the community. And I think a discussion around what expectations are for what the consultation document should have. It's a consultation document, not an information document. So I think we'll maybe just get some clarity on what that will look like. And that's it from us. Thank you very much.
Lawrence?
So I've got just a question from right back earlier. I had a bit of a brief conversation with the CE in the break. I want to ask the question. We start off with our rates income from the previous year becomes the baseline on which the waterfall works. In my business, if things are tight, we always look first at what our previous year's expenditure was, and are there any gains to be had in there? So my question, I guess, is the assumption is that we start off with the same amount we had last time. Is that appropriate? Have we gone through and ensured that our expenditure is fit for purpose, that it is achieving the outcomes we want in that 90 million? Or is there areas, I guess the question is there any fat in that 90 million that we could be looking at to reduce rates further. I don't want to go through line by line. I think that's a management job, but I need to ask the question as governance that has happened, and that we're not just assuming we will always continue to ramp up rates because we will always spend the amount that we got last year again and again and again, because then we're on this never-ending cycle of never stopping rates increases. So that's, I guess, my question in that, and you might have to come back with that reassurance, but I'd like to at least put that in the public record that I want to ask the question around that 90 million, that we are getting best value for money, that we're getting the outcomes that we want, and that money that's already budgeted.
I would suggest starting with the annual report in terms of what we're getting for the money that we spend. But I'll let Sean answer.
Well, from an infrastructure perspective, what we do is look back over 3 years and have a look at what the budget was and what the expenditure was against that budget. Again, to check both, I guess, the fit for purpose nature of the budget, the reality of what's deliverable within that space, and also looking at areas where we know that the budget hasn't been adequate in terms of looking at trying to explain why we've potentially overspent in some of those areas. So that's the process we've been doing for the last 4 months to get to a bid for that $1.9 million, which is what I talked about briefly at the last meeting. So, and again, briefly looking at what's sitting behind that bid, you can see the breakdown in terms of what elements of the services that are struggling to deliver on their levels of service at the moment in terms of cost, where we think there's a need to increase those budgets. But even before we'd got there, we'd looked at the overall funding for the infrastructure group to make sure that we weren't, even though you might set a budget against its delivery against the budget as well as the total expenditure. So yes, that work has been done, and that's where we've flagged as an issue there in terms of a need to increase those budgets. So just regarding the task of trying to find more funding in that space, that is 100% is a stopping doing stuff conversation in terms of infrastructure. And primarily for us, most of that delivery is done by internal staff for parks, open space, for the RETIC, for treatment plants. So again, that's a conversation about resourcing and levels of service at the same time. So that would be what we'd have to look at if we were trying to get that number down. And I don't know, that's a very difficult thing to do in terms of where we're at the moment, when we know we're not potentially currently delivering on some of those. To go further backwards is going to be tough.
Okay. We have to ask that question every time, though. We do. And we've already talked about one budget line today, which is the $80,000 extra for major events. Rather than pushing that into another area in economic development, we could look at decreasing what we spend on economic development by that amount, if that's what we decided to do. Just drawing out one example. The other thing is to make sure that we're not doing other people's work for them. I re-looked at Jocelyn's question around the car park in Paikakariki, suddenly thinking, is that even ours? And it looks to me like it's in Queen Elizabeth Park. I know we kill a whole lot of pests for them when that's their job. We've found that out recently. Just that kind of thing, if they're all little things, but they could add up.
The rats and mice, you mean? Sorry.
The rats and mice and rabbits. Just saying. Yeah. So are we kind of giving the message as a table that we have also talked about investing for the future? We've got to be clear about the message we're giving staff. Are we wanting to find those rats and mice and cut our cloth, or are we wanting to reallocate funding into areas that might result in benefits further down the track? Maybe that's food for thought between now and Thursday. Liz, would appreciate your input on this.
Well, I just want to reiterate what I said at another meeting. You just have to get really, really frugal on the bog standard living from day to day stuff, and to make sure you've got enough money to invest for the long term and moving forward. So that's just, and it's just the same as managing your personal budgets. You know, you've got a cost of living from week to week. You know, just standard stuff, the same old grind that just allows you to exist. Keep that to an absolute minimum. Squish it right down as far as possible to give yourself some headroom to move forward. That's you know that's but just basic good financial management. So I don't think we want to be doing a budget where we screw everything down, where we're screwing down the day-to-day stuff, and where we're too afraid to spend stuff on spend money on things that take us forward. You've got to have the right balance between the two. Otherwise, it's a road to nowhere. You just end up in a poverty mindset and a poverty trap, and you're treading water or going backwards for the next 5 years because you haven't made that investment in the future.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
That's all I want to say.
I'd agree with that. But I think what we said earlier in terms of making sure that we know why we're doing things and we know that we're going to get those benefits potentially from them. And we don't like the word hopefully particularly. Hopefully doth butter no parsnips. I'm quoting a comedian. You'd have to see the skit. Anyway, it's obviously getting late in the afternoon. Does anybody have any further comments, staff or elected members, before we wrap up today? Martin.
Oh, look, I just want to say thank you very much. We talked about flexibility and giving you guys the ability to, should we say, wheel and deal a little bit and that sort of stuff, which to me then that's what we need to be doing if we've got confidence on you as officers with regards to delivery. I'm very interested with the stuff that's coming through, and I think it's very prudent. But we are pushing the envelopes here as well as regards to looking at other options and things that we can do, that sort of stuff. So no, I'm pretty happy with the direction that we're going, very much so.
Thanks, Martin. Mark, do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for today's presentation. So, look, what our expectation is right now, we're going on a journey with yourselves to get the rates down to an acceptable level. And when we've done that, then we will be bringing back to the table. You'll get to see the profit and loss view. You'll see the revenue. You'll see the accounts. We'll be opening up all our operating costs. So you will actually get to see that. Where we're at in the journey now, it's just unhelpful to bring that level of detail to the table when we're actually just trying to understand what our cost drivers are and pressures. But you will start to see the impacts over the 10 years, because the long-term plan is, of course, 10 years. So there's lots of detail that is still coming back where you'll get to see the costs, and we are still looking at the costs. We still have the task to try and bring options to the table to reduce the rates further.
Thanks, Mark. Great. So I'll just do a wee karakia to end a long day. Kia tau, te rangi Māori e, kia runga I ngā iwi o te ao. Let peace reign over all the people of the world. Enjoy your evening, Sophie.